check with, Marge isn't gonna be here tonight, is she?
It's
I'll
her
check with
birthday,
her.
she's not gonna be here.
Pardon me?
It's her birthday,
Oh, I didn't know that.
she's not gonna be here.
Okay. Uh, I will, check with her tomorrow to see if she had any information on this
Great.
case. Or if she FOIA'd that.
Yep, double check with her.
Yeah.
I sent her a
Hello, Linda.
information
How are
request.
you?
Ralph, I think you're set up here.
No, I know.
All your paperwork is here.
I just had to move over, I don't wanna knock them down.
Oh, sure.
What's going on?
Oh, all the things. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Is that far enough away?
Yeah.
How are you, Alderman?
All right, Tony, how are you, sir?
Getting better.
All right, good.
Hey there. An agenda and a copy of the
Hello.
only current ordinance is there.
Where should I sit?
You can sit in any of the seats, I think. I don't think we're gonna have a huge crowd. Did you get any word from any of your committee? Okay,
Let me check my email though.
sure. Yeah, that would be the people who would fill us up.
What?
That would be who would add to our numbers, so.
Oh, okay. What about Wednesday?
I think she's coming.
Oh.
She told me she was. Have you heard differently?
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
So Ralph, what you have is our agenda. I asked Clerk Hall for any minutes and agendas from the Community Relations Commission. She put them together in a nice little packet for us. My communication that got us here, Alicia's communication, and the mission statement from the Diversity Commission, and then the ordinance.
Is that what she is, a diversity commission?
That's Andrea Mundet.
I know.
Well,
Hi,
she-
I'm the city
she is
attorney.
the
I'm
named
Anthony
chair.
Bertucca. Nice to meet you.
What was your name?
Anthony Bertucca.
Hi, nice to meet you.
That packet that you said that Clerk Hall put together for you,
So
may I
it's
have
just,
a copy of that?
I can make you a copy tonight. It is,
Yes, I'll go make it right
okay,
now.
very good. You have a copy of it. It's very small. You'll be fine. It's just agendas. There are no, they don't have any minutes of record. We have a whole minute. We'll be Alicia some time, right?
Yeah, let's go to at least till 6:35.
Is she a professor or an assistant professor? Isn't that true when you were growing up? If it's an assistant professor, you give them so much time. If it's a full professor, you give them so much time. If it's a TA, you just get up and go.
I didn't get anything back, so.
We may have I think we're gonna have to, having talked to Tony, we'll probably, I'm just relaying that having talked to you, we will, there's information we don't yet have.
What is that beeping?
I don't know, maybe.
That's your Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See if the Facebook alerts us to when we go live. Jim said it would. Oh, we're on.
Yeah, no, all right.
Okay. I have not heard from Alderman Ruiz.
Well, I think just, proceed.
I think you're right. Just send her a text. Okay.
So with that said, I'd like to make a motion that we convene the meeting.
Fantastic. I have 5:32. Are there any public comments that need to be made?
Not everybody at one time.
Well, I think we'll take that as not right now.
Right, exactly.
I wanted to provide an opportunity. I invited all three committees to be here, and so the minutes reflect, the agenda reflects that. But the only non-member of this committee and non-city employee is Andrea Monday, and you are the named current chair of the Diversity Commission.
Yes.
And Alderman Ruiz will be here in 5 minutes.
Great.
But our committee, our aldermanic committee is made up of me, Janine Reardon, Alderman Avila, and Alderman Ruiz. And Tony Bartuca, or Anthony Bartuca, is city legal counsel and representing some of the history. And we need to get him out of here in a
Thank you.
timely fashion, and so we'll move for that. Andrea, could you give us just a brief description of how your committee has been meeting over the year? Give us a chance to let Alderman Ruiz come in.
Sure. We started meeting, I'm not 100% about this, but I think last July, so we've been together a little bit over a year. We have met every second Monday of the month until December. So December of 2019 was our last meeting, and then coronavirus. So we did not have a meeting in January or February, and then March coronavirus hit, and then we resumed meeting virtually or here with this platform in May or June.
And
Maybe
you
June.
started in
I bel-
May, June?
It was June or July.
I think it was June,
Was it June?
June,
Yeah.
2019.
I could,
Thank you.
I
just
could look
didn't-
that up, but I don't know
and
if
I
it's
can
super
as well.
important, but
About June,
I think that's right. That-
about June.
That matches my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
is there anything else?
6 committee members?
There were 6. One moved out of Berwyn, unfortunately, so we are at 5.
Very good.
Well, we plan on replacing that 6th person. Okay.
Yeah, we just really haven't known how to do that or been able to address it.
Resident member, excellent. Okay. And Alderman Ruiz prepared, I presume with your committee, mission statement, responsibilities, just a general overview of the committee and where you would like it to go. Is that still current, as far as you know?
Yes, so this we went over, if you have the same copy as I do, which I believe you do. This we actually all went over as a commission in our last meeting.
If I may say,
Yes.
Alderman Reeves, you said is coming?
Yes.
Can we wait until
Oh, of course.
she gets here so we could talk about what she did? or what,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
Then we'll give her an opportunity to speak. But I know we want to give Mr. Ratuka
That's right.
the time now because he has to leave.
Yep.
So if we have any questions for him?
I think that's fine, Ralph. I
Okay,
understand.
thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that the Community Relations Commission is the oldest of the 3 commissions. It was created sometime in the 90s, we think. I don't have the original ordinance or know when that was originally put
that's where
forward,
I'm
but I
gonna
think
have
it's
to-
94 or 95.
And that's what I'm gonna have to get.
I understand. You and I spoke about that origination and if there were any legal requirements for the formation of that committee. As you read the original ordinance, it's very much a Fair Housing Act ordinance. It matches in line with the state Fair Housing Act. It's complementary to that and has connections for appeals and infractions and notifications that are in line with the state law.
Mhm.
But it mostly deals with non-discrimination in housing. And so that committee, we don't know entirely if there are any legal requirements for this. And Mr. Bartuka is going to do that research in connection with the city clerk. A FOIA, I put forward with the clerk a FOIA to the federal courts so that we could know if there's any obligations for us. Is that in line with what you understand, Mr. Bartuka?
Yes, yes. And I'm gonna search for the file in the warehouse of the Campbell versus the City of Berwyn case in 1993.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, my understanding of that committee or commission was that wasn't created only for this, but it did deal a lot with disputes between neighbors. And they didn't have a lot of them, but whenever there was one, they would go talk to both parties and then, you know,
I think that's what it became.
yeah.
The
eventually-
original ordinance is very clear that it's about housing
No.
discrimination. And so landlords with less, with more than 3 units and city contributions, if you use a realtor,
Right.
there are different standards than if you're just selling your house to your brother-in-law. But it's actually kind of a fun little read
Yeah.
to read through the ordinance and go, oh, excellent. And it includes sexual orientation, race, religion. It's, I think, part of the early conversation that started Bungalow. I think that sexual orientation was not originally included.
Right.
And it was part of the conversation that really stimulated some changes in Berlin. So it's pretty important, and we don't in any way want to lose it. But the committee itself has not been terribly active, and it has moved much more to interpersonal conversations between neighbors with the desire that it not reach the point where there be complaints filed. And so there is no record of their successes or the places where they still had opportunities for growth. The clerk did a search for minutes and agendas. I requested any minutes, and there was, she provided what she had, which was a meeting in 2015, without minutes, October 2015, February 2016, a meeting notice without an agenda on February 6, 2019. I'm sorry, the agenda is the fourth page of this for that date. And then another for October 16, 2019. But there are no minutes to tell us how the conversation, or what conversation was actually had. So it's hard to know what the history has been since 2015, and we have nothing before that. And the part of what concerns me is that in the ordinance, under this section of community relations, chapter 620, it's on page 1524.
Conference will automatically end in 5 minutes.
That sounds right.
Thank you. Well,
That's just,
I'm
for-
not sh-
that's just for people who call in.
I understand,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll text Mr. Frank and ask him if he can
just another fire.
help us.
But you said that there were no complaints filed, correct?
There is no record. Well, so they had meetings and they discussed something, but they worked hard so that no complaints were filed. That was part of their neighborly conversations with
Yes.
people. And so we don't know.
And to resolve that.
That's right, before there
And
were
that's- yeah,
complaints
Before there
in
were any
writing.
complaints filed or any lawsuits filed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
However, because there's no record, we have no way of knowing how successful they were in terms of how many neighbors did they help. So,
Oh, no, that's true,
Yeah.
but you don't have neighbors complaining about that they weren't helped.
well, that might be true, but I know that all three of us as aldermen have had conversations with neighbors who have deep complaints with their neighbors. And those weren't written down either, and many of them were quite difficult. That has been my experience. I had one just 2 weeks ago. So I'm not sure that having it not in writing tells us anything. Do you-
Right, yeah, and I understand what you're saying, but I think that, a lot of times, they're skeptical about reporting. The neighbors
Sure.
are skeptical about reporting. They want to keep anonymous, but you can't really keep anonymous if it's your next door neighbor.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
and I know that at the time, the committee would encourage them, in order to get this resolved, let's come forward,
Sure.
It's good for everybody, so, but there weren't that many complaints, If I remember, there was, I've been here 12 years, and I
Sure.
think there was, I think, a couple of them that I can remember,
Sure. And I think all we can do is talk anecdotally,
Right.
right?
I'm
So,
sorry,
but
I didn't.
we can only, because there's no data, there's no records of complaints, we can only speak anecdotally. But I've had at least 5 in my 3 years in the Third Ward of neighbors with deep, deep concerns
How
about,
come nothing was filed?
I received, I don't know why they didn't go to the commission, but I also am aware that very few people know that this commission was active. And when I brought concerns of a particularly difficult situation where the Confederate flag was purposely put on the inside of someone's house so that it shone into the bedroom of the neighbor's child, the conversations that we had never said, take it to the Community Relations Commission. And so I didn't know it was actually functioning. In some ways that's ignorance on my part, but it's also it's a huge gap of people making those connections. And so that's part of what I would like to lift up. If these exist and they're to be useful, but
You
no
will now
one
be
knows about
placed
them,
into the conference.
if no one knows they exist, then they don't function. So our work may be to publicize them so everybody knows that they're existing. I don't know exactly, but I'm just, I'm bringing that forward. Now, I thought I heard both of you say you've had conversations with neighbors with difficult issues, and you've worked to resolve them without taking them anywhere else. That may not be true. Have you had those conversations with
I've had
neighbors?
conversations with neighbors, yeah, and that's, we resolved it, that's why it was no issue, But and I knew that there was a relations commission out there that I could go to,
Okay.
And I recommended that to them.
Very good.
But I think the whole thing is that, we got 3 different committees or commissions.
Right.
And your idea is to try to consolidate them, is that my understanding?
I would like to nail down what they specifically are doing, and if they are related, consolidate them, and if they're not and distinct, work to make sure that everyone knows that they are available. And in fact, it's not just a recommendation that these exist and you should take it, but in fact, if someone calls us with such a problem as that, we fill out the form and file it with the committee. So that it isn't a question of, we don't have any problems in Berwyn because there's no data. Well, you can't say that. You also can't say we have huge problems because there's no data. So, but if I knew that filing the complaints, I would, there are 3 specifically in my mind that I think should have gone to this kind of commission. And they were about, my neighbor needs to move.
How long was the last one, if I may ask? How long did that happen? How long ago?
2 weeks ago, I became part of a conversation with neighbors with cultural differences who were having an extraordinarily hard time figuring out how to be neighbors together. And
Did you ask them? I'm just curious. Did you ask them to submit a report to or complaint?
I did not, because this commission hasn't been meeting. So
I know, but they did exist, and I think you knew that they existed, right?
I'm not arguing that, Ralph.
Yeah.
I'm saying that I don't think they function. So I think part of the work that has driven me to bring it to us is that we make sure that they function so that when we have those situations, we can encourage them and file it. I think it's something that we should file. If we want to move it to the commission, and then the commission can go and have conversations with people that we've become aware of. But that would be part of what we discuss.
Excuse me, wouldn't the people go to the commission to have instead of the commission going to the people?
Well, so I think that's an interesting question. If people call me, and I actually had lovely conversations with the folks 2 weeks ago. Last year, the neighbors in question took turns calling the police on each other. And the number of calls, the police were just like, we're done. This is becoming a dispute that's unresolvable, and we're not going to be there. No one's been physically injured, and it became untenable. And so, but there was no data that says, this is the kind of thing that would go to that, and I was not aware of the commission at that point.
Well, this is the next step or something. I got you.
Right.
All right.
But I mean, we all have some stories about
Oh, yeah.
the tit for tat calling the police on each other, and so that's a waste of our police resources. Our policemen are not actually trained to be neighbor negotiators, and so it's wasteful, and it's not often resolving of problems in my experience. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Apology for my tardiness.
Glad to see you. Glad to see you. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I think that I personally would not like to go too far back into this commission, its function or dysfunction. I think that right now we've reached a crossroad where we definitely have to have clear boundaries and functionalities of the two, the Ad hoc Diversity Commission, if it's going to move forward and get codified, and what is that vision and what is the foundation? What is the vision that they, that we give them for them to move forward and empower them? And secondly, you know, if we are still to adhere to legally to the community relations, what exactly does that entail? And make sure that it is definitely advertised, marketed, and available, and is being utilized to the extent that it should be. And if it's not, if we're not legally bound to it any longer, do we want it to continue to exist, and at what capacity? I think that's where we're at, and I believe that's the discussions we should be having now. And not so much about, I mean, obviously the data's not there, and I don't think that any more time that you invest into looking for it is going to generate
Sure.
it. It's just not there.
No, I agree with
Now,
you.
whether it's
I agree with
broken
you.
or not broken, or
Sure.
worked and doesn't work, I think is irrelevant at this point. We just know that we've come to the crossroad that we have an ad hoc committee that exists of volunteers, I might like to add, that have invested a lot of time and energy into a cause. And if they're no longer going to exist, or their functionality is changing, or it's unclear, I think it's fair to them to be able to be concise about that.
I agree. And Anthony, you are slipping away. You have 9 minutes to meet your ride.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. Our weight is not on data, it's on documents that will help us with the history. Until we
Okay.
have that, we can't answer your question. I agree with you. We're not going to search for data that doesn't exist.
No, I was just sharing my opinion
Yeah.
as you asked for.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think we're in agreement about that. So, Tony, when do you think you can get back to us? What's a reasonable amount of time to wait for a FOIA from the federal courts?
During COVID?
You're the legal expert, so I'm asking you.
Is this on the record?
Well, ballpark it for
Let's
us.
put it this way, I wouldn't hold our breath,
Okay,
okay? Because now they have a time period after the clerk filed the FOIA,
that's right.
okay? Then they can ask for an extension,
Okay,
and if they have a good enough reason,
sure.
and when you're talking about some of these documents being a few years old, to
Sure.
put it, you know, bluntly, they could get a further extension.
Okay. It was filed
I
on
would-
Friday.
Friday. I would be thoroughly surprised if the clerk received informational response within a month.
That are the FOIA laws that attach to the courts different than they are as they attach to the city?
And I think all the FOIA laws are the same.
So we should receive notification of some kind within 5 days.
Yeah, you may not get a complete,
Right,
yeah, but
right,
you
but
know,
they'll tell us,
yeah,
Yes.
let you
we're
know
on
where
it
it's at.
and we're not getting it to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So,
I'm sorry.
so we should know something in a week, and that information could help us to set another date.
Oh, I'll
and-
notify you. Well, the clerk will notify you also.
Excellent, okay.
And I'll double check and I'll
And then we'll set on your schedule another conversation.
find.
Right, that's a good idea.
Okay, very
Okay,
good.
thank you very much for
Well-
your understanding. Thank you.
Yep.
Nice
you,
meeting
Tony.
you.
Have a nice evening.
Okay, thank you.
Do you need help out?
No, no, thank you.
You need a hand?
No, I have, thank you. And yeah, I do need a hand.
All
Very
right,
good.
Counselor, you take care of yourself.
I don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember the one-armed man, the fugitive.
There were shotguns
53
involved, weren't
years
they?
ago, because I know we were on our honeymoon. 53 years ago this month, I think the last episode was being aired. We were in Hawaii and we came home early from dinner to watch it.
Oh, my.
Didn't Harrison Ford do a remake of the movie?
Yes.
Yes, but
Okay.
Yeah, here's.
That's what I
yeah,
this
remember.
is, yeah, this
Back in
was
the
on,
80s or
Yeah.
something.
everybody
Back
watched
in the
it,
day.
oh, it was
Nice,
something else, every week.
nice.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you,
Um,
and I'm sorry I have to leave.
Good night, Tony.
We understand, thank you.
What do we do here?
Just hold it
Don't
down.
worry about it, we'll figure it out for you.
Okay, red is off.
Yes.
We'll take care of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I'll
you.
get back to you when I check with the clerk and.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent, we'll be
And
in
I'm gonna look for
communication.
that- I'm gonna look for that case,
Thank you,
if someone look for a case.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Watch your step there.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't need to hurt the other shoulder?
Please don't.
No, please.
Please don't.
Okay, okay. So we can't review anything we don't have, which is the legal obligations and requirements. We did the brief introduction. Alicia, I heard you say that you feel like there's urgency for the sake of the existing commission?
Well, yes, I mean, it's an ad hoc committee that right now doesn't have a clear vision or boundaries. We didn't codify it 2 months ago at our city hall meeting when it was on our agenda.
Certainly.
And now, it's like sending a blind driver to drive. Where do they go? What do they do? What do they focus on? And I don't think it's fair to them. And I think that they need that clear boundary.
Certainly.
So either we put them on hold for now until that's determined, or we empower them to continue, but on what foundation?
Sure. Well, and I think that's right, and you've given them a foundation that you think that they should work from. The conversation, I think, does this overlap with existing committees and commissions? How does it overlap? If we empower this commission while we're still empowered this one.
No, I understand.
So I'm just saying, I completely understand the sentiment that we've asked these people. Thank you, Andrea, for being here tonight and sitting quietly, which might be projected for several more weeks. But if we rush into if we just say, go and do it, and we don't resolve these issues, I think that's not what we should be doing
No,
either.
it's not good.
No,
It's not good for
that's
anybody.
not my point either, to rush into this. My point is that there has to be clear boundaries, and we have to determine them.
Absolutely,
And that's
Absolutely.
based on the two commissions.
right.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that both commissions have a mission, so to speak, you know? You've written one for that one, and then the other one that we talked about, has a, so I think legally, we probably need somebody like Tony, the legal department, to see where we could combine it. If there's overlap on any one of these, they
Sure.
should be able to tell us, you know?
Well,
And not mean pass it on their own, but bring it back to us and say, hey,
Of
this is
course.
what we did, you know?
Of course, but here's, so I would agree with that and add that the human relation, the Community Relations Commission is focused on housing and discrimination and the ways in which the city participates in that. The Diversity Commission has been looking at city policies and how they are discriminatory or not, and how the city participates in that. And so I am arguing that in fact it is discrimination and city participation in discrimination and the city's responsibility to curtail discrimination even when it isn't city property or city employees. That's that question. And how much power do we give each of these commissions, or do we make a single commission, and how much power do we give them? What is aldermanic oversight? What is our responsibility as aldermen? And saying legal should make these documents merge, I don't think we have a clear understanding of what we actually want to give to a citizen volunteer group, right?
And that's why I said
I-
legal should, do that for us, because we have no clue. you know.
I don't want legal to do that for us. Do you want to tell the legal department to make this the strongest possible non-discriminatory policy and empower a group of volunteers to
No,
execute
no, what
that?
I'm saying is, give us a draft, and then we'll decide if it's appropriate or not. I think that, you talk about the housing, the one the community relations is a lot of housing,
Mhm.
but then we also talked about it being disputes with neighbors. That probably shouldn't be there.
Probably
That part
not.
of it should not be, that part should be,
Okay.
maybe with you know, your commission, if you will, you know? And that's what I'm saying,
Maybe.
is maybe they could look at those, unless you wanna do it, but
Well,
I'm not
You're
legally.
not, well, so but I think policy, the legality of policy, after we create policy, is legal's responsibility. Telling us what policy should be is not legal's responsibility. It is the aldermanic responsibility.
Well,
We create policy, they
I
tell us
guess-
whether it's legal or not.
Well,
I guess either way, it works the same, you know, but we could do it either way.
But it doesn't, Ralph.
It does, but, you know, I'm not gonna
Well, they
dispute
go
it.
hand in hand.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, so,
But I do believe that, I mean, my opinion is that I believe there should be, that both of these committees should exist, but they should have very separate work and very separate division.
Exactly.
A vision, and their boundaries should be very clear. We obviously need some oversight committee, which sounds like it already existed, pre-existed, and was dysfunctional in some sort of way, and may need to be revised and revamped and reborn. But I also believe we still need a diversity and inclusion committee / commission, whatever you want to call it, that truly assists us as aldermen to make sure that when we do, decide to hold events or write policies, that we are inclusive of the diversity in our community, which are two separate matters. They're very
very
defined, and they're very clear. There's no overlap. But I also believe that these two parties, commissions, committees, should make the recommendations, do the work, make the recommendations that the three of us in this human relations, because that all falls under human relations, should then be reviewed and decided by us whether it carries any warrant for city council to vote on. It's kind of my vision of and how they should function and
Okay.
the boundaries that they should have.
Okay.
Because I don't think that if you're dealing with discrimination issues, those are typically not very welcoming issues. They're not embracing issues. You're not creating a welcome wagon for people. You're dealing with discrimination issues, which usually have to deal with, ethnicity, gender, age, race,
Right.
all types of those things. So you usually can't be the welcome wagon and the police at the same time. They don't function well. There's always going to be a disconnect, I think. So I think that there needs to be two separate commissions that fall under the Human Relations Committee, Aldermanic Committee.
That's.
Just my
Sure,
2
sure,
cents on it.
Sure, I'm in the conversation. How does that function?
Right.
And when I think I would like us to, we're not policing, right?
Well, I use that term.
I know, and.
Maybe
part
too
of the-
loosely.
Part of the question is, the Community Relations Commission, as this ordinance is written, is in fact an enforcing commission. If they determine that this should go forward to the courts, they don't talk to anybody. This gives them the power to make that happen. And they can jump and it's written so that they don't consult with the mayor in terms of permission. They consult in terms of knowledge and notification. But if something has reached the level of being discriminatory in housing, as the Fair Housing Act, they act on that. And so to say that, in fact, they should bring it to the aldermen before they do that is changing this ordinance.
Okay.
And so,
Well, I haven't had a chance to see it. This is the first time I'm
Well, it's-
having privy to it.
sure, except it's part of the ordinance.
Yeah.
And and I think in part, that's what I'm challenging myself and all of us to do. What is oversight and what is our responsibility? And I haven't looked at it as thoroughly as I should have. I don't get to use that as an excuse for very long. So I'm urging us to get up to speed so we can have these conversations, myself included. And we have an ordinance with teeth, but it doesn't function. So it doesn't actually matter, does it? So we're going to create another commission. Do we give it teeth? Do we give it a budget? Do we give it enforcement powers? how do we talk about
Or you
that?
give rebirth to this one, like you said.
And I don't have the answer, and that's what I would like us to talk about, so that we can talk about it with some authority, or at least some knowledge, when we bring it to our colleagues and make the decision together.
Well, I think until we know for sure whether we're still bound to it.
Sure.
Is,
Yes.
there's not a whole lot we can do before then.
I
And the clarity of what we're bound to and how they've been functioning,
Sure.
obviously have been two separate things.
I agree. I also want to add to the dynamic, is it still worthwhile, even if it hasn't been functioning? Should it be functioning?
But
And
if we're
should,
bound to it, I don't think we really have a say that we can not do it any longer.
well, if we're bound to it, then we better make it function.
Right.
But if we're not bound to it, should we make it function? That's the question
Well, I
that
think
I'm
there's a
asking.
component of it, but I don't think that that's all of it. I think there needs to be more. I definitely think it needs to be revised if we're not bound to that any longer.
Exactly. Maybe take, like I said, take
Sure.
some sections and give them to,
Sure.
you know, different committees. You know.
Well, but
But can we do that? You know,
can we do
yeah,
that?
Right.
And I think we also, that's where we bring legal in. That's why I asked Tony to join us. He doesn't know the history. We're also going to have a legal determination of, is this, as I read it, it follows very closely with the state law. I'm not sure how much of it is negotiable. So whether this commission does it, or someone in the city does it, or if they all go to the
The
state.
Fair Housing
Right.
Law? Okay.
Fair Housing Act.
Yeah.
I don't have the year in my head, but it's part of, it's a bigger web. And so I don't want us to get tripped up in that. And so it doesn't function, throw it out, and I don't know that that's the answer at all.
No, of course not.
Right?
No,
So-
I don't think it is.
Okay. So we need to hear whether it is legally obligated, but we also need to ask ourselves, how much of this should we do, even if it isn't? And I think that's an opinion question to each one of you. And if we're not legally obligated, what are we going to do with this? And who should be responsible for it? Should it be a committee made up of 3 aldermen? And how often are we going to meet to do this? And that's where we
Yeah,
start to
my
commit our own
question would be,
time.
why wasn't it committee of 3 aldermen before? Is it legally? You know, I don't know. You know, that's the question that we need to find out. you know.
Absolutely,
So-
and this committee didn't exist until this group of aldermen was interned.
So,
So,
so I think that in your communication about today's meeting,
Right.
you're gonna ask Tony for certain things that you
I
just
have.
asked him. And you could include part of that to investigate this and,
well, I'm also asking you to read it, because
Oh,
I heard
man.
Alderman Ruiz say we would be responsible for what they do.
Right.
And if we don't know that, well, shoot. It's like giving our kids to a babysitter who's never ever actually watching them. Mine's 11. That seems like a real possibility. So can we do that in the
Yeah.
next 2 weeks? We'll look at this and the Diversity Commission as it's been laid out. I know that you have also done other research, looking at other communities and diversity and inclusion commissions. Some of them I've done some as well, and some of them have wide-ranging authority and very specific orders. And they're rarely, as I've been reading them, you said welcome wagon? They're not welcome wagons, the ones I've been reading. And it's a pretty serious conversation. And who do we ask to do that? Should they be volunteers? Should they be paid? I think that should be part of our conversation. If we have high expectations, do we also have to have some remuneration for that? And in a budget year when we don't have a budget, what will that mean? And do we have a choice, looking at the wider world that we live in? So those are the things that I would put forward to you and ask that we talk about, we think about, and we come back together potentially in 2 weeks, but after we get some word back about the historical necessity of this original commission. Is that agreeable?
So you want to meet in 2 weeks?
Maybe, depends on what, his timetable is
No, I
gonna be,
think
right?
she's saying we're gonna meet in 2
I,
weeks.
I would like to set a meeting for, not Tuesday in 2 weeks, but Wednesday or Thursday in 2 weeks, if we have that information. Is that possible for you to put a temporary placeholder? And if we get the information by Friday, so that we have the 48 hours notice, that I would set that. But it would not be before our next council meeting. I don't think that that seems reasonable.
Well, 2 weeks is September 1st,
Excellent.
which is the
So
week
there's an
before our
extra-
next council.
there's
Yeah,
an
we're gonna have
extra
in
week.
there.
I'm always pleasantly surprised when that happens.
So that works for me, I'm open now.
So look at September 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Do you want to say the 2nd?
I can't do a Wednesday or a Thursday evening.
All right,
It
so
would have to be Tuesday or Friday.
how about we tentatively
Which is-
say the 1st of September?
Okay,
And I will let you know the Friday prior
okay.
and have
Well,
it,
hopefully before then.
well, right,
As soon
but
as you
I,
know, as soon as you know.
of course,
Yeah.
but
Well, I'm
that,
putting a placeholder on it until
that
I
would be
hear
as
from
soon
you.
as we would meet.
And it would be the same time, 5:30?
Works for me?
Yeah.
For you?
So Tuesday, September 1st, 5:30.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Next meeting, Tuesday.
Human Relations Committee. I would like at the very least to consolidate names or change them so that they're distinct. If I, was just wishing. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion
So
to,
moved.
Second.
at 6:11?
Great timing, Janine.
Thank you all very much. So,
Did I call Jim up and tell him it's over?
I will.
I'm sorry that I.
You are the
did
last
have-
party in the conference.
Did you have any public comments?
There were none.
Okay. So this is our ordinance that's on our website?
Yes.
I
Tony,
believe so, yeah.
Tony printed that one. I got it, so the one with the color? Yeah, it's buried. So it should be exactly the same document. They both came from the same location.
This is yours. So you only gave out 3 things, right?
No, I gave out 5 things.
5?
Yep.
These have stamps on them, so I don't
So,
think these
no,
are
no, I
these.
did. I got
Oh,
them
you
from
did?
the clerk.
Oh, okay, I keep putting them back thinking.
Yeah,
it's
no, I got them
the
from the
original.
clerk. So the original is the
Okay.
notice of the meeting,
Your meeting letter.
then
second reading.
communication, the packet from the clerk about the minutes and agenda from the community relations.
Oh, this one.
Yep.
Okay.
Then your communication